episode 77 of the Real World Wellness Podcast. Hi everyone, I'm Christine Lehman, a nutritional therapy practitioner and the reverse diabetes coach, which is also the name of my website. I see clients in person and remotely, and I'm accepting new clients in March. If you book a package of 3 sessions by March 9th and are willing to use a free online video chat, I will give you a free 60-minute bonus session. The only caveat is that you need to book the 3 sessions and complete them by March 31st because that's when the bonus session coupon expires. If you're interested, you can reach me using my contact form on my website or just email me at christine@reversediabetescoach.com. Please remember, while you're listening to the show, advice and information we provide is intended to be helpful and informative, but is not a substitute for medical advice or treatment. So I mentioned last episode that I would interview Robb Wolf, the author of the 2010 New York Times bestseller, The Paleo Solution, this episode about his new book called Wired to Eat. Robb and I had a great 60-minute interview on Thursday, but he and his publicity team asked me to hold the episode until mid-March, so it's released closer to his new book release date called Wired to Eat, and that will be released March 21st. So my interview with Robb will air as episode 79 on Thursday, March 16th on all the places you listen to my podcast, including my podcast page, iTunes, Stitcher, and iHeartRadio. So of course, I want you to stay tuned for that. But to whet your appetite, and because Robb will give you 4 great bonuses if you pre-order the book before March 21st, I thought I would give you today a preview of my interview. Besides being a best-selling author, blogger, and podcaster, Robb is a former research biochemist and health expert. If you follow Robb at all, you know that he takes an evolutionary perspective on nutrition, exercise, stress, and sleep. And he also talks about, during the interview, the importance of community. So we cover all these areas that he covers in the book as well. So in my interview, we also talked about what inspired him to write the book. You know, I'm always really curious about what goes through people's minds when they're inspired to write a book or even compelled to write it. Then how the research has evolved since 2010 when his first book was released. You know, what's new, right, with the paleo diet, what's new with the food science and evolution. So we also talked about the concept of personalized nutrition, and that's something Robb does a really good job of explaining. So part 1 of the book, it's organized into 2 parts, focuses in depth on what he calls the neuroregulation of appetite. And to quote Robb, he says, sleep, stress, the gut biome, photoperiod, and he explains that term, and of course food, all affect our how our appetite is regulated. I go deep on these topics to make the case that if you find navigating the modern world of hyper-palatable foods, I love that expression, and he explains that too, a challenge, if you find change to be hard, it's not, emphasis not, your fault. This is normal and an outgrowth of how our genes were forged in a world quite different than the one we find ourselves in today, end quote. So that kind of sets the stage, I think, for why I really like his book title, which is, the long title is Wired to Eat, turn off cravings, rewire your appetite for weight loss, and determine the foods that work for you. So Robb also really digs deep into the scientific research. Again, that's not too surprising given his background as a former research biochemist. But what I like is he really brings that information to bear on pretty much whatever he writes. If those of you are following his blog, you've come across that, as well as his previous book, but especially this book. And that's really important. I don't know if I've mentioned this, but I'm actually a healthcare writer as well, and including health and wellness in that. But I have a master's degree in public health journalism, and I spent a lot of time learning how to interpret the research accurately. And that's really important. Robb also has that skill, and he draws on the data so that it's not just hearing his opinion, but it's substantiated with real data so that you know when he makes statements, he's got something to support it. It's not just his opinion. So part 2 of the book is really the how-to section. And it starts, and we talk about all this in the interview, with a 30-day reset to fix the neuroregulation of appetite, which is really what we were talking about in part 1, to help people lose weight and get healthy. And Rob also describes a unique tool that he includes in the book called a 7-day carb test. So I really like this because one of the discussion points was during the interview was about this sort of concept that of one size fits all. It doesn't matter what diet you're trying, right? It could be paleo, it could be the Mediterranean, but the idea that everybody works to the same degree on a template, and that just isn't true. We're all wired, if you will, to individuals. So that we each have our unique genetic makeup, and how the environment affects us is going to be, different than the person standing next to you. So that's an important concept we talk about, how to really customize, a paleo diet to, which is people typically think of as low carb, to your particular responses to various carbohydrate sources, and then determine the amounts that you need and work best for you. So for you, you can map your response by experimenting with different carbs, and he tells you which ones, and he explains all that. And then you can figure out, whether you should be low carb or medium carb diet, and more of a low protein. So it's, again, the point is not everyone is unique, and so it's very important, before you just jump into even a paleo diet, even though for the most part I think that does work well, but again, within the paleo diet you can tweak it so do I really need to be low carb? How much carbs, and maybe which ones as well do I do well on? Will I respond optimally? So we talk about that tool, which he provides in the book. And then I ask Rob why he devoted the final chapter to ketosis and fasting. You may have heard of intermittent fasting. That's been very popular. Ketosis is a way of burning fat. It's a cellular process, and I've certainly talked about that on previous episodes with Amy Berger. There is a lot of medical literature now. Some of it's been out there for a while. What's unique with Amy's take on it, she applied it to Alzheimer's, but Rob and I talked about its application to multiple sclerosis and some degenerative diseases, but how it's been used more recently for weight loss and other goals. So we talk about the pros and cons of those approaches, and so who is appropriate for, who it's not appropriate for. And then we end the interview on Rob's interesting take on the word hypochondria. So I'm going to just leave you in some suspense about what he has to say about that. And sorry about all the computer prompts that are being noisy today. So tune in on March 16th to hear the complete 60-minute interview with Robb Wolf about his new book. And he also gives some personal stories as well, which add human interest. And as a thank you for just listening today, I still have a little more information to share, but I'm going to tell you right now what his 4 bonuses are and how you can pre-order his new book, Wired to Eat. This way, you will get those bonus giveaways by March 21st. So the key here is to, frankly, pre-order the book now so you can get those 4 bonuses, because they pretty much, some of them will go away at the end of the month. So let me describe first what the 4 bonuses are. So in addition to the 30-day reset that he has in his book, he gives you a step-by-step guide to Wired to Eat, and he helps you put the new principles into practice. So this is a guide to the 30-day reset and how to implement it. Another feature or bonus that he provides, I think, is cool, because it gives you not just the typical pantry list, and you have to go out and fill it, if you will, at your local grocery store. I think Rob went a step further in making this even easier for people. So he's partnered with Thrive Market, which is an online kind of paleo, very healthy food marketplace that offers a curated list of all your pantry staples, but you get a 25 to 50% a discount off retail plus a $20 gift card. Now that is only available to U.S. residents, but that's a great deal. And Thrive Market has super high quality food, so you could take advantage of that. That definitely goes away at the end of the month. Now a third bonus is I believe an extra chapter called or a material. It's an interview that he's turned into content, and it's called Your Blood Work and You. It's an interview with Dr. William Cromwell. He's an MD, Discipline Director of Cardiovascular Disease at LabCorp. Now, for those of you who get regular lab testing, you may have heard of LabCorp. It's a pretty well-known lab in the United States. Dr. Cromwell is an expert in the world of individualized healthcare and interpreting your blood work. So based on this 1-hour interview, which is, again, I think in a more print form, we discuss the ins and outs of what to look for in your blood work and how to interpret your results. And I can tell you that, while I guide my clients in this and have some background, I'm not an expert in it. So I think that's a great thing to learn, and that kind of takes the guesswork sometimes out of understanding your results. And then there's the last bonus is a bonus chapter called Lies, Damn Lies, and Statistics, which I really like the title. So Rob says, what would you do if academia, the government, and media all conspired to give us the wrong dietary advice? You have lies, damn lies, and stats or statistics. So I think that's something that most of us who are in holistic nutrition already know, frankly, has happened. But is, I think, sort of to some extent being corrected slowly through new research and getting the word out, but we probably still have a ways to go. So anyway, that gives you the really interesting historical perspective on how, the big question is, how did we end up here? Why are we in such a mess with our food industry and our health in the United States, and specifically when it comes to nutrition. So I think you'll benefit from all of these bonuses, and certainly reading that chapter and then understanding your lab results. And the 30-day reset is a good way to just, if you want to experiment with the paleo diet and see how it works for you. So to receive these 4 bonuses, you have to, again, pre-order the book by March 21st, and that is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, IndieBound, INDIE Bound, and iBooks. Then the second piece of the process is to get those 4 bonuses, you email your receipt to wired2, that's the number 2, eat, wired2eat, @gmail.com. And finally, Rob and his team will confirm the receipt then and email you the bonuses. So that's why I'm giving you this opportunity now to pre-order the book, so you can email your receipt again to wired2eat @gmail.com and receive those 4 bonuses. So before I close out on today's episode, I wanted to give you an update on the rehabilitation of my broken wrist. To recap, I broke my wrist on January 22nd. I'm laughing a little bit just because I can see it is a little humorous that I did this ice skating, given that, I did know how to ice skate at least some, but nonetheless, I wobbled and fell and stuck my left hand out to break the fall, and unfortunately broke my left wrist in the process. Now, I am grateful it's not my right hand. I am right-handed. That would have been much worse. But I'm not going to say this has been a fun time. This has frankly been an ordeal. But again, I like to share some things quickly that that have helped me, and I feel if I can help other people learn from my experience here, I'm happy to do it. So wrist fractures are very common. In fact, they're one of the most common kinds of fractures. So there are a lot of people out there, I've realized, with limited hand mobility. And so beyond wrist fractures, there's people with rheumatoid arthritis, carpal tunnel syndrome, and probably some other conditions. So just to address the people with fractures, I want to share that I'm really glad I saw an orthopedic doctor, and this is the key point, who specializes in hands. I think it's important to see a specialist for whatever body part, if it's back or leg, whatever, a hip fracture, whatever it is. I think it's very important to see the doctor who specializes in that particular anatomy, part of your anatomy. The second thing is that my orthopedic specialist, again, who had done the surgery on my wrist back on the 26th, a couple weeks later really insisted that I see an occupational therapist who is also a certified hand therapist. That is this very specific credential that requires an additional 75 hours of training. Now, I had found a couple more convenient physical therapy clinics, that I was like, yeah, I could get to, even if I can't drive, I can be there in 5-10 minutes. My orthopedic doctor just totally disabused me of that idea and mentioned that some of his clients had actually done worse after being seen in these particular, and I have to emphasize, these particular named clinics that I shared with him. So it is certainly not every PT clinic. I'm not trying in any way, shape, or form to cast any negativity on physical therapists, but the point is just that if you can see someone, it's worth seeing a specialist if you can find one. And he pretty much said, because of the reputation of these two clinics, he said, some of my clients have actually done worse there. So the point is that it's worth finding someone, both from an orthopedic doctor as well as a therapist, to really help the healing process, who specialize, in my case, in hands. Also, the other thing is the sooner you can start, and I'm using the term physical therapy loosely. The person, again, I saw was an occupational therapist, but you get the idea. So the sooner you can start that, the better, because one of the things that I've been dealing with is that after being 3 weeks in a cast and then a splint, I lost a lot of mobility, and I'm kind of I cannot do a move that is called pronation and supination, which simply means that you turn your wrist in a palm up and a palm down position. So that is something I am working hard on, and there may be some scar tissue there. And so my occupational therapist is really to push me and impressed on me the importance of exercising my wrist and running through these exercises she has given me multiple times daily. Because when I started, I thought, I'll run through this, and that included my forearm and shoulder, twice a day. And she was like, no, this is kind of like almost a full-time job. You need to do it hourly. And especially if I want to avoid the possibility of having a second surgery to remove scar tissue. So that really kind of woke me up to, this is not something I want to mess around with, and if I could just do it consistently for even in probably 3 more weeks, then I will be able to hopefully avoid that. And I'm pushing myself. That's the other thing. The advantage of seeing a physical therapist / occupational therapist is that they will push you beyond what you normally feel like doing. And I'm not going to lie, it can be very painful. In the beginning, I was just exhausted after my sessions, but now my pain tolerance has gone up, so I can go further. And I have realized I have to take her approach, which is to push myself seriously as well. The other thing I wanted to share is that because of my limited mobility in my left hand, I really depended on my neighbors and friends to drive me to my therapy appointments and run errands. But I got frustrated with being so dependent on other people. I mean, especially a month of this, and I'm sure my friends have been great, but one doesn't want to do this endlessly. So I went online and found this steering wheel device called a power steering knob. And you can just Google it. And I got one with a good grip. It's silicone. I believe it's Korean. And unfortunately, you can't read the instructions. But it's very simple and easy to install. You just need like a Phillips screwdriver. And it comes with these little spacer tabs. So you install it on your steering wheel. And what it allows you to do is with your good hand to turn the steering wheel, both left and right very easily, and therefore you can drive safely, which is very important. So that's really made me more independent and made me freed me up, as well as the people who were giving me rides. And again, that's people I've read online, even with rheumatoid arthritis and many hand conditions, use this device. So I also want to just mention again that it's taking my health and this issue about the scar tissue very seriously, because I've really made the time and energy for it. And while it'd be tempting to put other things, including my work, including, frankly, even the podcast, ahead of it, I've realized that, if I don't make this a priority, I'm not going to improve. And this is pretty similar to what I find with my clients, that I try to emphasize, this concept of self-care, which is, if you don't take care of yourself, no one else is going to do it. So I just have, kind of following my own advice to clients here about the importance of really taking your health and any in this case rehabilitation very seriously, and making the time and energy for it. So I'll continue to update you on my progress, and I appreciate any the good thoughts, and if any of you meditate, that you send me. So next episode, speaking of that, I will be chatting with Dr. Ronald D. Siegel, a psychologist and part-time assistant professor of psychology at Harvard University Medical School. So Dr. Siegel is an expert on mindfulness, and for those of you who've been listening to my podcast for a while, know that I've had other Buddhist monks talk about meditation, but we're going to talk about it in the context of his books that integrate mindfulness and concepts of compassion and self-acceptance, which are also, frankly, Buddhist concepts, with psychotherapy. So it should be he's written at least 4 books, and I'm really looking forward to talking with him about it, and specifically focusing more on mindfulness and psychotherapy. So stay tuned for that next week. And then thanks everyone so much for listening. And please contact me if you need help getting healthy. And I'd also appreciate knowing your suggestions for future podcast episodes. Have a great, healthy